A Bloomberg survey last week asked people what would they buy if the U.S. did actually do a clean default. The answer, most would buy gold, then Bitcoin, then U.S. dollars. Implying, of course, that you should be rooting for default if you happen to own gold, Bitcoin, or U.S. dollars, but perhaps not if you own a bank. Now, I've mentioned in recent videos that clean default ain't happening. It's an empty threat because governments know if they stiff investors, the deficits are gone forever. Nobody will lend. Still, what if we did do a clean default? Now, one of the gaslights throughout the debt ceiling debate has been the almost sacred incantation, quote, "The full faith and credit of the United States shall never be questioned." This is nonsense. In fact, the U.S. has defaulted many times. It has questioned that full faith and credit many times, including after the 14th Amendment that allegedly forbids it. The last big default was Nixon closing the gold window in the 1970s. That meant foreigners no longer got the gold they had been promised for their dollars. Instead, they were just random green tokens. Before that, the biggest one-off default was FDR, who effectively canceled 40% of the national debt, incidentally including the Liberty bonds that naive citizens had bought to fund World War I. And he did that by canceling 40% of the value of the dollar itself, by devaluing dollars in terms of gold. By the way, there were 14th Amendment suits brought against FDR, which were obediently discarded by a pro-government Supreme Court in a 1935 decision that featured McReynolds' famous dissent, quote, "Just men regard repudiation and spoliation of citizens by their sovereign with abhorrence, but we are asked to affirm that the Constitution has granted power to accomplish both." And affirm they did under threat of court packing by the dictatorial FDR. Beyond these hard defaults, since that 1935 spoliation and repudiation, the U.S. has added soft defaults on the national debt via inflation nearly every single year. In fact, 84 out of 87 so far. To the point that today's dollar is worth 1/2000th of an ounce of gold. That's about 99% gone. So yes, default is always on the table, but spot the pattern. All of these defaults, 40% under FDR, 50% under Nixon, 99% since the Fed, did not just take out the debt, they took all dollars out. Every bank account, every fixed pension, every dollar saved up in a coffee can. Basically, the federal government couldn't get rid of a hornet's nest, so it burned down the entire town. And so, given it's now well established that default is very much possible, in fact, it's the standard playbook for 84 out of the past 87 years, I'd argue let's stop defaulting by destroying the dollar. Let's man up and just clean default. Issue new debt for the widows and orphans, and as for Wall Street and China, devil take the hindmost. In reality, the choice is not between default and full faith and credit. It is between clean default that only takes out the financial enablers, and a dirty default that takes the entire US dollar down with it, and that takes all Americans down. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.